Welcome, everybody, to another edition. How's everybody doing tonight? Hello, Jennifer. Hello, Lala. Is everybody starting to slide in this evening? Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. So, Mr. Decker, I got all my cameras up and running out in the woods for deer season. So,
oh, awesome.
Yeah, 27 of them. I got 3 to 4 on a tree.
Perfect.
So,
Doing the 360 thing so we can see all the way around. Ain't nobody sneaking up on them. All right.
Yes, and I got cable locks on them so they can't be taken down just because it is hunting season, just in case if a hunter does go to sneak in. But I covered that area where there is no animals. But I did find an area where there is a good-sized buck, it looks like, rubbing its antlers on a tree.
Okay.
So that is, I was like, wow, that's interesting because that was never there before. So we'll see what happens. So what we got cooking tonight?
Tis the season for that.
Yeah.
All right. So as you all know, a couple of weeks ago, I was down in the Kettle Moraine. While I was down there, we had a listener that wanted to meet up, and so we met up and did some hiking around. It was a wet, kind of dreary kind of day. Where we first wanted to go hike was the Long Lake area of the Kettle Moraine, where a local Bigfoot researcher had directed me to. But when we got there, we found it was completely closed off and blocked off for the season. And so we decided on another point of the Kettle Moraine to hike on. And so we met up and did some hiking. And during our hike, this person told me some of her personal stories that they encountered. We've got kind of a weird creature story, and then we have a good UFO story. And she had told me that she had other stories that we didn't get a chance to talk about. So tonight we're going to bring on my new friend Jessica from Wisconsin, and we're going to talk about the encounters and stuff that she's been through growing up.
Jessica, come on down. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello there. Welcome to the show. Introduce yourself. Tell everybody all about you.
So my name is Jessica. I live in Wisconsin. Lived in Wisconsin my entire life. Moved around a little bit here and there, but most of my life experiences have been here in Wisconsin, southeast.
Interesting. Well, welcome.
Yep. We had a great time, didn't we, Jessica? It was really fun to get out there, and even though we were soaking wet, we did find a beautiful area to hike, and it was just absolutely gorgeous. It was way too much for me. Wore myself out, but it was worth it. First time I'd been in the woods in a while. So it was definitely worth it. And I really appreciate you meeting me out there so I didn't have to solo it. And we had a great time.
Yeah.
And your stories, I call them stories, they're encounters. The word stories is easier to say. I don't want to make it sound like you're making these up because these are events that really happened to you. Right. And the first one that you told me about, the seeing the thing in your room, it had so much familiarity to it from some of the reports that I've taken, but at the same time, it definitely had some unique points. And then we're going to talk about that. And then she actually drew some pictures and to kind of give us a visual of the encounter. And Grizzly's got those that he can post up for us. So let's go ahead and jump right in and then talk about your beginnings with the paranormal and not just paranormal, but weird stuff, the 14 stuff and how it all started. And then let's go ahead and jump right into the encounter in your bedroom.
Well, so my experience with the paranormal, it actually kind of goes a little bit further back to growing up with going to a private school and having the kind of the basis of there is no such thing as paranormal. So at one point we had to do like these term papers in school, and so one of my topics that I decided to do on was ghosts and apparitions, and could they be actually photographed and documented. And so I ended up doing really long, extensive, and I was really proud of it, a report on paranormal when I turned it in. Even though I thought it was A work, they couldn't give me an A because, according to the religious school I was going to, ghosts didn't exist. And so from there, I kind of went on and dug deeper into it because I always was kind of fascinated with stuff like that. Um, but when I was we moved into the house that I lived in most of my life when I was about 5 or 6.
Okay.
And in this house, it was always kind of a creepy area in the room that I lived in, or I was staying in. And that whole corner of the house was kind of creepy to me. But of course, it was my room, so I just kind of had to deal with it and go. One particular night, I was probably about 9 or 10. I woke up later in the evening, everybody else was asleep. And I don't know what had actually woke me up. I couldn't even tell you what time it was, but I just had this like eerie feeling that something was staring at me, and I'm kind of looking around my room, trying to make out objects, and it was pretty dark yet. And I kind of was going, okay, well, there's nothing that I really see. So before I actually laid my head back down on the pillow, um, I had this table top right to the side of my bed, and in it, I saw a head turn and move. I could see this figure, and the head actually turned and looked at me, had these bright glowing eyes, and um, I kind of froze, and it actually turned and smiled at me and had these jaggedy white claw type teeth, very skinny and gangly kind of looking, and almost like razor sharp, like point claw type finger like points, just very skinny. And it was just sitting at my table that I would sit and work at and do my drawings and my books. And um, the only thing that moved that I remember moving was its head. Its head turned slowly and just grinned. And that's when I ended up like I closed my eyes and just said, "Oh Jesus, Jesus, please make it go away, go away." And when I opened my eyes again, I didn't see it. So that's when I ended up screaming for my mother to come in, and she ended up finally coming into the room and turn the light on, and what's going on. And she didn't see anything. For years afterwards, I kind of felt like, okay, well, maybe I was imagining stuff, but it was it was it was definitely real. There is no doubt about it. I know what I saw.
Yep. And this, what we have on the screen is the drawing that you showed me
Mhm.
of what you saw that night. So this is actually what you experienced, and this is what it looked like as you were laying there in the bed. And I know one of the things that I was asking you about was, what size was this creature? Are we talking full grown man size? Are we talking really big, or are we talking a smaller creature?
Smaller, definitely childlike, because the table that it was sitting at was a child's desk. Again, I was like
Hmm.
9 or 10 or something like that. Um, so, and it didn't even, its feet didn't even touch the ground when it was sitting in the chair. Had its hand, the one hand I could tell was definitely on the table, but the feet, it didn't even touch the ground. So
Okay.
it was smaller.
Okay. Anthony's got a question there. Was there any woods nearby your home where this took place?
No, I lived in, so the area that I lived in was well, I guess you could kind of say what it was, mainly farmlands all around the area.
Hmm.
Some smaller, like not woods or forests, but just like parkish type trees
Hmm.
um, in the outlining areas. But the neighborhood that I lived in was a smaller little clump residential area that was actually right next to the quarry, the rock quarry. Um,
Okay.
so there wasn't really a whole, at the time, there wasn't really a whole lot of other houses. It was just a small area surrounded with farmland.
Okay. Do you know what they were getting out of that rock quarry? What kind of rocks they were getting? What kind of minerals?
Um, I I couldn't be certain. I know a
Okay.
lot of like I know my dad would get the sand for our backyard sandbox. He would go over there to get it. I believe that there was maybe some quartz.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, as far as I know, it's
Okay.
mhm.
Wow. And I know somebody said it reminded me of the Critters, and I don't know if you ever seen the movie Critters.
No.
There's many movies, but I think what you're talking about there is the teeth remind you of the Critters' teeth, and I would agree with that. But the shape of this thing was, to me, was more like Gremlins, and we had talked about that a little bit. Just kind of with the larger ears and the way it was looking at you. And you had said that first picture Grizzly had put up was about the closest thing that you could find online resembling it, but you said it was a little different. The nose wasn't quite right on it. Grizz, you want to pull that one up real quick for us? Yeah, that one there. You said that was like what you found that you feel like most resembled it that you could find outside of your experience, right?
Yeah, actually, when I was looking up some other things, this image actually came up online, and it just gave me chills because um, it it's very very close with the jaggedy teeth and the beady eyes and the pointed ears, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't remember mine being as muscular as the picture or stocky because again, like I said, the the thing that I saw was very gangly and stringy, like
Sure.
thin, yeah, arms and but yeah, that was pretty creepy when I first saw this one. Yeah.
Have you ever been able to put a name to this entity as far as in your research? Did you come across something that you would maybe refer to it as, like the closest proximity?
The only thing that I've come across is maybe like an imp kind of thing.
Yep.
Um, but some of the descriptions that I've read on those don't really match um, some of the other things too that possibly I thought might have been the same entity that had happened a few years later too. But I'm not sure. Maybe could be.
Sure.
Um,
That's the only name that I can think of to come up with it, and that's more of just a Hollywood name, or you know what I mean, like just as a description of a small critter like that, right? We're not going to call it a gremlin, even though to me that's kind of mostly what it resembles is a gremlin from the Gremlins movie.
yeah.
Um, Now you said you encountered this thing a little bit later on at some point.
Well, and I don't know if it was. I don't know exact because I never actually saw it, so I don't know if that
Okay.
was what it was. But there was another situation in my room again, very similar to just late at night waking up. So at this point, I had actually had a cat, and she would sleep with me every night right by my feet.
Hmm.
And this particular night, I woke up and I could hear her playing in the middle of the night because cats get the midnight friskies, and I could
Oh
hear
yeah.
her like she's playing with the. I used to keep the paper bags from the groceries in the
Hmm.
bedroom with me because she would play with the balls and run inside the bags. So this particular night, I woke up and I could hear her like rolling the ball into the bag and jumping on top of the bag. And
Right.
I thought, okay, well, nothing. I'm going to go back to sleep. So I tried to go back to sleep and just ignore it. And it was like she was getting really, really worked up and playing with this bag and making a lot of racket. And I finally kind of was like, stop it, go to sleep. And she stopped, and I could hear her run around the bed, run around the end of the bed. And I had a water bed. So you could only get into or under the bed or behind the bed in two directions. And it had run all the way around and came around to the other side of the bed
Hmm.
and ran underneath the back headboard with enough force that I could actually hear it like thunk against like the headboard, like skidding across my wood floor. And I was like, okay, well, stop. And okay, now she'll stop and be fine. And okay. So I went to pull my bed sheets up and kind of readjust myself. And as I went to pull my bed sheets up, I felt a weight at the end, and I ended up looking up very slowly, and I saw her actually. My cat was like dead weight asleep at the foot of my bed on top of my feet. It was not her. And I ended up sitting there the rest of the night, pretty much with my sheets up to my chin like this, just waiting for daylight to come. I was too terrified to even move.
Oh, I couldn't imagine. No thanks. So, I mean, if anybody that has had pets, it's what she's talking about. You hear there's something running around, and it's your animal, and you're just like, oh, whatever. You're not worried about it. And then I thought it was funny the way you described like running and then sliding on the floor and hitting the headboard. It's like hitting the wall. I've seen dogs do that so many times. And so for you guys know that's a familiar sound. So you weren't even put on alarm by this. You didn't even know anything was happening, but then you saw your cat sleeping. And you described it like wasn't breathing heavy. There was no way it was running around being active. It was dead, sacked out, asleep.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. No thanks. And you're saying it possibly could be that entity or it could have been something else you don't really know, right?
Right.
Okay. So Cliff was asking, did you do any research on the land itself to maybe see if there was a history there? Yeah, there you go. Or anything like that about it?
Honestly, I've never, because we moved, I was probably about 20, 21 when we moved out of that house. And then I kind of went my own way, and my parents moved into a different house. So after I moved, and I ended up having my daughter, and kind of life took over, and I actually never did any further research in the area.
Okay.
But now it's something I probably should do is try and dig into that area more. I know a lot of it was farmland. When I talked to my parents previously, that was pretty much all farmland out there. But like I said, the neighborhood that we were living in was right next to that rock quarry, to the point where during the week you could actually feel when they would blast, you could actually feel the whole house kind of rumble.
Oh, sure.
So
Yep.
I'm sure that land underneath there is all just full of whatever minerals they're going after, and if it is quartz, it's a big possibility that it could be something energizing the land. But also, we're right off the Lake
Yep.
Michigan, and then there's also a power company probably just a few miles down the road too. So I always say I was living in that like trifecta of energy vortex kind of thing. So who
Sure.
knows?
Sure. Absolutely. And to me, those kinds of creatures, any type of the goblin type, gremlin type, whatever you want to call it, imps, little monster creatures, the ones that hide under your bed. To me, those seem to be more of a different realm than ours, as opposed to a creature that's living in the woods, like a Bigfoot or something like that. To me, they always seem like they're part of that more paranormal other world than they are so much a natural part of our world. And so having that energy confluence there, that kind of makes sense, in that aspect of it. You're absolutely right about that.
That would make sense too, because there were times where, because like I said, in that corner of the house where my bedroom was, and then in the basement, that whole corner area was just kind of eerie. And I had asked my mom, actually a few months ago when I was trying to put together all of my encounters and stuff, I was asking her about that basement. And she says, well, yeah, I would get the feeling that that somebody was watching me. And I said, wait, you never told me this. She goes, well, I always brushed it off like, it was my imagination. I'm like, but mom, I had experiences down there. And she says, yeah. And I says, well, I said, where exactly did you feel like you were being watched? And she said, just in that doorway there area, like somebody was staring at me. I said, that's interesting, because that's usually the area that I always got the feeling from too. And not always. And that was what was really weird. Sometimes I could be down in the basement and nothing, be perfectly fine. And other times I would just get that cold chill going right down my back. Like, oh, thinking about it actually is giving me chills.
Was there anything specific in that corner? Do you know? Was there like water pipes over there, or was there electrical conduit over there? Was there any appliances over in that corner, or was it just bare? Like kind of lay that out for me, what it looked like down there.
So when you would go down into the basement, you go straight down into the stairs, and then the left side of the basement was pretty much an all open area. My father had actually redone the basement, and there was a like a mini bar kind of thing, some closets,
Mm-hmm.
entertainment area. And then if you go to the right, and then take another immediate right, there was like a folding door that would lead you straight into the laundry room.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an experience in there, but that's never where I actually felt the creepiest. That was as you come down the stairs, and instead of taking an immediate right, you kind of take a right and go straight. And then there was two sliding door, folding doors, and we called it the train room. There was a big model train that my dad had set up in there.
Okay.
But other than that, yeah, there was the furnace and then the electrical box.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they were always doing stuff in that room too, and it would still give me the creeps. It was always
The
just
the laundry room area specifically is what you're saying?
the
The
train room
doorway?
area.
The
That,
train room.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
And the reason I'm asking is because there is a known phenomenon with EMF, right? So if we're talking electromagnetic fields, where you get what they call a fear cage, right? Where the idea is our bodies are sensitive and we can detect changes in the electromagnetic field if they're strong enough or severe enough. And one of those things that happens when you do encounter a fear cage, as they call it, is you get that feeling of being watched, or you get that prickly feeling on the back of your neck, or all these different things. And so a lot of times when you're doing a paranormal type investigation, especially in a place like a basement, one of the first things you look at is what kind of electronic stuff is going on, what kind of appliances are down there, where the conduit is, because you could inadvertently have a fear cage down there and not know it, and then just like randomly you're down there, if the electronics are turned on or there's power going through it, you could feel stuff like that. You won't necessarily experience or see anything, but you'll just get that feeling
yeah,
of being watched and I'm not saying that's always what it is, right? But when you're doing an investigation, those are the kind of things that you look for it as a possibility. And that's where EMF readers really come in handy, right? I'm not necessarily a big proponent of EMF readers as detecting ghosts, so to speak, but they're really good for knowing what's going on around you, and kind of know what the layout is. So I'm not saying that's what it was. I'm just saying, there is that aspect that, as an investigator, we look into and we look at for that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Now,
What was the floors and walls made out of in the
Was
basement?
the house itself was built in the early 70s.
Okay.
So I believe the basement actually had the brick, like the cement brick wall type walls.
mm-hmm.
The cement or limestone?
I couldn't tell you.
Did it look like rock
Um,
or did it look like concrete cinders?
from what I can remember, it looked like concrete, but I know I didn't spend a whole lot of time down there after or before my father actually redid the whole basement. So from what I remember, because I remember the laundry room was like it was painted and it had the squares.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, I don't know. I guess I don't know what the limestone concrete would have, or limestone blocks would have looked like.
Like creek rock bread,
Like
like you
natural
find.
rock,
Right.
Oh yeah, nope. It was definitely not natural rock. It was definitely like cement block
like
type
the
Okay.
thing.
cinder blocks.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. But I did have the other experience that I did have down there that I hadn't told you about.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably 13, 14 maybe. It was late and I had to go to school the next day, and I was trying to get I had to go downstairs and get the clothes that I had thrown in the wash earlier. So my parents were actually sitting upstairs watching TV on the couch, and it was late, so I had my pajamas on. They're like, you need to go get your stuff. So I went downstairs, put the laundry basket underneath the dryer to try and pull everything out. And there was stuff in the back, so I kind of reached in to grab the last little bit. And while I was bent over, trying to pull that stuff out of the dryer, I actually felt something actually touched the back of my leg and raised my nightgown up.
Wow.
And I could feel it on the right side of my leg, and it was a very cold feeling, like a cold hand. I can't even say it was a cold hand. It was just cold. I could feel it actually trace up the back of my leg, and raise my nightgown up over my hip. And I flipped out, spun around, like about to deck whoever was behind me, and my hand just swung around and hit nothing but air. Kind of looked around for a second and froze, like, did I get caught on a hanger or anything else, or the laundry basket? And there was nothing there. And that's when I just kind of grabbed what I could with the laundry, and with my back up against the wall, scooched all the way back up the stairs and into the living room. My parents are sitting on the couch, and I'm like, did my brother go downstairs? And they're like, no, he's in bed. What's going on? Get to bed. I'm like, something touched me. And my dad kind of made a joke out of it. He's like, oh, so we have this, perverted ghost in the house? I'm like, yeah, you're not helping me, Dad.
Yeah, that's typical, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty creepy.
Yeah.
Again, it was in
Yeah.
that same area.
Okay. Wow. Um, so did anybody else in the house ever experience a touching sensation like that? Or are you the only one that had that you know of?
That I know of, I was the only one that had that.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of times, my mom had said that I know my mom had said that she had, like, my grandmother came back to her one time, and spoke to her after she had passed. So my mom is a little bit more open to the paranormal and
Right.
things that could be. But my dad always kind of made a joke about it, except for aliens. He was adamant about those. But
And we'll get into that. Wow. So the bait now, where in your room would be in correlation to that spot in the basement? Was there any correlation? Like, was it directly above it? Do you know, if you were to draw a line?
yeah, it was directly above it.
Directly above it.
Actually, my room, the square of my room, was pretty much parallel with that corner of the basement that was the creepiest, that had all
Okay.
the strange things going on.
Okay. So there is some correlation there. That's interesting. I wonder, well, I should say it makes you wonder what's there, if there was some kind of vortex, or I'm going to say portal, but just something influencing that particular area of the house. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Somebody had mentioned earlier, I think it was Cliff, that said he believes that the imps are more soldiers, like underlings of something bigger. Did you ever feel something like particularly ominous in the house, other than just, getting that feeling of unease? Did you ever actually feel like there was something wrong or something evil happening there, or was it just kind of these weird little incidents that would happen?
Weird incidences.
Okay.
I never felt anything super evil in the house. Outside of the house, I did. There was a few reoccurring. I kind of question it now if they were reoccurring dreams per se, or something more. Because when I moved out of that house, all of those dreams just stopped and
Okay.
didn't happen. But when I moved back into the house for a small amount of time, those dreams started to pick back up again. But the backyard, actually had a strange feeling to it on that same side of the house, all along that north side of the house and north side of the yard. It all had
Okay.
that eerie, but it was more ominous outside.
Or outside. Okay. Was it the same dream repetitively, or was it just more disruptive, kind of nightmarish, like kind of a thing, or is it the same thing over and over again?
Same thing over and over and over. I would have this repetitive dream where I was in my room, and some of the dreams would start with, I don't know if it was like a T-Rex or a giant that would be actually coming in and staring at me through my bedroom window with
Okay.
almost like laser eyes, and there was nothing I could ever do to hide myself from it, and it would like scan through the room.
Hmm.
Um, and as these dreams progressed, sometimes I would try and control it a little bit more. And there would be times where I would actually go, okay, I can feel it coming. I'm going to go hide deeper into the house. And it would still like scan through the house and be able to find me. And there would be times where I would go through the house and I would notice that the door was wide open. The front door is wide open and it's coming down, or there's something coming down the street. And I would go to shut the door and lock the door, and I could not lock the door no matter what I did to try and do it. I just couldn't get it locked. Or if I did finally get the door shut, there would be a wide gap, like the whole door would just shrink and it wouldn't actually
Okay.
seal and keep the house secure and locked in. It would be the front door, and then it would also be the back door, and I would run to the back door and try and do the same thing, and I could never get I would actually in the back door, I'd actually, in my dream, put my feet up against the door and my back up against the wall and hold myself there to keep the door closed.
Keep it closed.
Mhm.
Wow. And it was always the same kind of thing whenever you were in that house. When did those dreams start for you? Do you remember, or was it just kind of always had been?
As far back as I can remember, yeah, pretty
Okay.
much.
And it only happened while you were in that house.
Yep.
What was the frequency like? Was it, every couple of months or every couple of years, or was it like, every week were you having the same kind of dream?
Oh, it was like every week. Yeah,
Okay.
it was very frequent.
Okay. So here's a question for you, and forgive me if I'm too personal, and if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But did you have any inkling or any ideas of possible um, alien abduction activity happening in that house?
I don't know.
Okay.
See, and that's
Um,
one of the questions I've asked myself as well. As I've
uh-huh.
been hearing other people's encounters, I'm like, I'm thinking, wow, could it have been? I don't know. I
Right.
I have no idea.
That might seem really left field for some of our audience members, but a lot of abductees report having dreams that have the similar kind of connotation to them of trying to hide and you can't hide from it, or trying to secure the house, but for some reason you can't secure it and you just feel exceptionally vulnerable. This theme has come up many, many times in reported abductee cases. And that's why I just wanted to ask that just in case, because we never know unless we ask the questions, right?
Yeah.
Oh, have you ever? Okay, she's asking if you have ever played with that board, Jessica. I'm not going to say the name of it. Not that I'm afraid of it, but just to make sure all the people are
Already
happy
know,
out there.
already know the answer to it.
You already know the answer.
Yes.
Prior to all of this happening, no. Again, I went to a private school. I was always told that those boards were no
Hmm.
bueno. Kept far, far away from them. I did get a board for a Christmas or birthday present. I'm not sure which one it was at one point, and I pretty much was thinking, I don't even remember who got it for me. Why would you get this for me? And I didn't even take it out
Right.
of plastic. I ended up putting it up in the closet. and left it there. Did not touch it for years. So when I was 17, I went split off into the military, and I had two of my best friends come and stay with me the night before I was supposed to leave for boot camp.
And this is when the movie starts.
And that is when I took the plastic wrap off the board and decided to play.
Okay.
And some weird, crazy stuff happened, but it was not in the house. We were actually outside. We did a lot of camping growing up. So my dad during the summer would always put the pop-up camper outside, and we'd always
Sure.
have like sleepovers and stuff. So that's where we did that. Pulled it open, and some things happened through
I
that.
hear
Well, that was
screaming.
What's that?
Said I hear screaming when you all played with it.
No, no screaming.
Not screaming as in you're dying screaming, but screaming as in like what the hell screaming. That type of screaming.
Yeah. It didn't take a whole lot for it didn't take a whole lot for it to start having
You know, like what the hell screaming. Not
yeah.
the like I'm dying screaming.
Yeah.
So
jump scares.
yes.
Wow. Okay. Now, did this happen to be in the same area of the yard where you always felt like it was ominous and bad feeling? Is that where the camper was set up? Because that would just been a really bad idea.
No, actually the camper was set up towards the middle of the yard away from that area of the house. But I always think of that line from Batman, ever dance with the devil on a pale moonlight?
Yes.
Yeah, well that's what it asked us to do.
Yep. I was waiting for that. I was
Yeah.
waiting for the holy water there, Grizz. But just to be clear, as you said, that was years after
Yeah.
these events. That there was no direct correlation. This wasn't a case of using a Ouija board and not, as they say, properly closing it or anything like that. The two incidences are not. I'm not going to say they're not related, but it wasn't a causal effect. It wasn't, that kind of a thing. So that was a good question. That was a very good question in there.
Yeah.
Did your
Spirits
dad?
have no
Oh,
concept of time.
this is true. This is true. They're outside of the fabric of time is the idea with it.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other rabbit hole. It's a good rabbit hole. Did your dad ever say he ever experienced anything like doing the model trains in the basement or anything like that, or he just thought it was just all kind of bogus?
Actually, my dad always kind of made fun of me about that, the whole
Mm-hmm.
paranormal side. And again, the aliens were a different thing because he had buddies who he knew through the military and had heard stories of Area 51 and that kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a different thing. But when it came to cryptids and paranormal, he always kind of just joked with me until recently.
Okay.
Since they moved to Florida, unfortunately, two of their dogs that they've had for quite some time passed away within a year of each other. And he swears up and down he actually has been seeing them both. The
Oh,
one
wow.
the one
Okay.
right before the second one passed away, and now both of them. And he is a firm believer now, and now he's like, let's go hunting.
You're like, see, I told you. I'm actually surprised because given everything you said, I would have figured he was having stuff turning up missing with his models. I would suspect that would be something that he happened quite frequently where he thought he misplaced something or he couldn't find something. I know I put that here, but I just can't find it. I would expect that kind of activity out of the model train area.
Well, he was working on that with my little brother.
Mm-hmm.
So if something was missing or moved, which he always was complaining about that in the house regardless, whether it was his tools from the garage or in the house or whatnot. And the train area I stayed completely out of, but him and my brother actually worked a lot in there. So I wouldn't put it past that he probably just blamed it on my younger brother.
Okay.
I should ask him actually if he ever got in trouble for moving things in the train room.
Sure. That's just and misplacing tools. I mean, that's a guy thing. We always lose everything, and we got to blame somebody else because it's definitely not our fault.
I'll admit I probably was one of the culprits.
That's something I would expect that he probably, and like you say, if it was happening, he probably wouldn't even notice it if he was working on it with the brother.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I want to fast forward now to the next event that we talked about. Totally different, right? And I know you have this story, and I know there's some other things involved with it, but we have a UFO sighting, a UFO experience, and not your standard UFO experience. And that's what really caught my interest in your story. Grizzly, this will be the next picture. And if you want to go ahead and, oh, hold on, somebody's got a question, Anthony. There are stories of toy trains holding spirit, right, because of the electronics and the energy involved with it. Yep. There have been those kind of stories involved as well, Anthony. You're right. But let's go ahead and move forward to your UFO encounter. Let's talk about this.
Well, that one didn't actually transfer correctly. It's a long ways, but
can we flip that, Grizzly, at all? Is that possible?
Yeah, stand by while she's talking.
Yeah.
So, in the year, it was probably about 2001. I was actually the DD to take my buddies home from the bar. We were coming home one night, and I was driving downtown area, coming down one of the one-way roads, and to drop off my first guy friend in the apartments that were downtown. And we were sitting there, and as they were getting out, I could hear what almost sounded like a large plane without the engine, like the engines failed or something, where you could actually feel like the pressure of the atmosphere, the air above you, kind of closing in. And I looked up thinking, oh, is there a plane coming down through the sky? And I thinking, oh my goodness, I could see this object coming over the top of the buildings. And like that plane is going to crash into the lake. And it kind of took a second for it to dawn on me going, that's not a plane. There was no sound other than, again, it was more just like a heavy, heavy hum, heavy pressure of this
almost
thing
more like you could feel it instead of hear it, kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And as it came through, the buildings, they're not that tall downtown. So as this object was coming down at an angle, I could see the front but not the back. And as it passed over, I could see the back but not the front. So as far as how high in the air it was, I couldn't tell, but it was large. It was large enough to cover the sky area where we were sitting. And I kind of, to my buddies, I'm like, dude, do you guys see that? They're like, no, what was it? And I said, it was a UFO. No. So my one buddy ended up going up to his apartment and waited for him to get in, and my other friend got in the front seat, and I said, we're going down to the lake before I drop you off at home. He's like, okay, whatever. And we drove down to the edge of the lake, and I could actually see there's a lighthouse that goes way out towards the middle of the lake, and I don't think it's there anymore. But then there's the main lighthouse, and I could see it in the distance, almost right on the horizon, sitting in between the two lighthouse areas. So I said, okay, we're going down to the main lighthouse, try and see if we can get closer to it. And we went down by the park area, parked right along the edge, which was kind of what the picture was trying to portray. And in the middle of where the main lighthouse was and the farther one out, you could see almost kind of offset to a little bit to the left, this dark figure actually sitting right on the lake. It had a soft glow of like orangish, pinkish kind of lights that were kind of fading in and out, but it was very dim. And even with the darkness of the sky and the lake together, you could still see the shape of this object, kind of dome shaped up on top and just kind of sitting right there on top of the water. Like it was just hovering, or floating or just stationary on the lake. Tried to wait and see, because it was, I mean, now by this point it's after 2:30, it's after bar close. I've already driven them kind of home, and I wanted to wait and see till about 4:30, 5 o'clock, hopefully get the sun coming up and see if I could see anything definitive. And my buddy couldn't see it. He couldn't see it at all. And I couldn't tell if it was because maybe he was just very intoxicated or if he just didn't see it at all. So kind of sat for a while, and I'm watching it and watching it, waiting for it to move, waiting for it to do something. And that's when my buddy started to kind of freak out and was like, we need to go. I need to go home. We need to go home now. We need to leave. We need to go. And I couldn't argue with him anymore. He was way bigger than me and he was freaking out. So I wasn't going to have it.
Right.
Ended up taking him home. So I never did find out what happened afterwards. I looked in the paper, looked on MUFON, tried to do some research and see if anybody else saw anything similar in the area, and I never saw anything of anybody else experiencing anything at that time.
Okay. Do you think maybe your friend finally saw it and maybe sobered up enough where he was able to see it, and that's when he started freaking out?
Well, I would say I don't know, but I actually asked him a couple of days later after he had some rest and could sober up. He didn't remember the incident at all.
So even if he did, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he just didn't remember it. He didn't remember sitting there. He didn't remember by the lake. He didn't remember anything. Nothing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. So when you saw this object floating there or they're sitting on the water, and you mentioned the pink lights, were the lights under the water line? Were they like under the water, or do you think the lights were above the water?
I don't know, maybe, well, and I couldn't see anything when it actually went overhead. I couldn't see anything but darkness. So I wouldn't be able to tell exactly where these were, but I would assume that with as dingy and dark as the lake is, unless those lights were extremely bright, I would have to assume that they were above the water and just very dim.
Okay.
Yeah, that was always my assumption, is that they were above the water.
Above the water. Okay. I was just curious because the way you kind of described them fading in and out and kind of dim made me wonder if they weren't just under the surface of the water, and the dimming in and out and then the kind of faded was that effect of them being under the water a little bit. But I would assume if that was the case, you would have been able to distinctly tell that the lights were just under the water. You probably would see the waves and the ripples and stuff. So that was a question I didn't ask you before when we were talking about it. When it was sitting on the lake, was it doing anything at all? Was there any rocking motion? Was there any sounds? Or it was just something you could see, but it was completely just that? There was no other sensory experiences with it?
Well, and that's the weird thing, is that there were no sounds. I had the windows open, like trying to see if maybe I would hear some type of like a whirring sound or an engine sound or anything. And it was just dead silent. There was no, I don't even remember hearing like crickets or birds or anything. It was just silence, nothing.
Okay.
But it was still, it was not moving. I don't remember if it was a particular, it had to have been a particularly more calm night on the lake.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely, it did always kind of make me wonder, like, if it was actually sitting on top of the water or if it was hovering and just holding itself, because it did seem very, very still and very
Okay.
planted in that spot.
Okay.
And
Now they're asking, are they asking what lake?
Yes. And what
And
state?
in what state? So it was in Wisconsin, right? But are we talking Lake Michigan, or what are we talking about for which lake?
yes, we're talking Lake Michigan.
Lake Michigan. All right. And southern Wisconsin?
Yes.
Okay. So southern Wisconsin, Lake Michigan, and any of the Great Lakes are known, if you're in the fields of study, of all kinds of different type of UFO and paranormal activities, a lot of weird weather phenomenon, aerial phenomenon, strange lights, and all kinds of stuff like that. I believe there are even a few accounts of USOs, which are basically underwater UFOs, um, unidentified submersible objects, as opposed to unidentified flying objects. And there have been reports out of Lake Michigan of these kinds of things. And it's very interesting because there are a lot of reports of UFOs correlating with water, and not just, big lakes or like the Great Lakes or the oceans. There's a theory out there that they have to take in fresh water, for whatever reasons, whether it be for, a cooling system or fuel, or just for water or flushing a system. I mean, our guess is as good as anybody's guess, but there is that correlation in a lot of reports of water and UFOs. In fact, I have heard reports, and this is another one for me to research, and I just thought of it, that supposedly Christopher Columbus sighted a USO under his ship as he was coming to America. I'm going to have to make a mental note to look that up to see if we can't figure out if that's another urban legend. But there have been those reports, so I always find that interesting with the water aspect of it. Um, but then you had to leave, and there was nothing to it. That's crazy. I mean, that's an amazing story. Do you
Was
have any
there
other Oh, go ahead.
was there any birds or insect sounds?
No, it was absolutely quiet.
And was there any mist around the UFO? Anthony Lewis wants to know.
No, it was, I mean, especially for that time of the year and stuff, and the lake being as calm as it was, there was no mist, no fog. It was a very, very clear night. Very clear night.
Interesting, yeah.
Oh, good question. Good question. Have you had any other UFO experiences at all, or is this kind of your solo experience with it?
That's pretty much my solo experience with it.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing else that I could say definitely that would have raised the red flag for me going, okay, that was something a little bit odd, but yeah, that was pretty much it for that.
Okay. And because we're on the topic of the UFOs and aliens thing, you mentioned your dad believing in aliens and UFOs because of some military friends. Can you give us a little detail on that, or do we need to not cover that area?
I just remember my father always telling me stories about Area 51 and, hearing different stories. He was in the military for a little while before my parents got married. And I don't know if he had heard the stories then or after, because he worked he worked at a gas station, back in the day when they would actually come out and actually fill up and clean the windows and air the tires and do
Right.
all that stuff.
Yep.
So he heard lots and lots of different stories. But one of the things that I always remember him telling me about was Area 51. He would tell me about Area 51 before he knew or could say what Area 51 was. I had been hearing about that since I was little, and he would always go, "Yeah, I know it's a base out in Nevada somewhere, but I don't know. It's a secret base, and there's aliens there." And it wasn't until later on I went, "Dad, Area 51. Yeah, I told you about that."
Wow.
You know, it amazes me when I come across people that are so open to one area of weirdness, but then completely shut down the idea of another area of weirdness. I guess because I don't think that way, it just doesn't make sense to me of how you can be so open as, oh yeah, UFOs, aliens, all this stuff, but there is nothing weird happening in our house. You're just imagining stuff. That blows my mind. It really does. I don't understand that kind of, I don't know if I want to call it tunnel vision or just one mindedness, but I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think. What is
Wow.
it that Spock always said too? When you remove all the impossible, what you have left is the probable, and I can't remember it exactly, but
Well, if you remove all the possibles, whatever's left, no matter how impossible, has to be the answer.
that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it
Yeah.
always kind of, I'm with you there that yeah, if things just don't match up, they there has to be some oddity, and if it's paranormal or whatever, then that must be the answer. Investigate that.
Right.
Mm.
Right. It might be an answer. We just don't know what that answer is, or we just, have our words for it with no understanding of what it really is. We just have our own basic ways to describe it. Like how does an Amazon native describe an airplane flying over? They've experienced it. They can describe it, but they can't tell you it was an airplane. And that's just kind of how we have to look at all this stuff. We can experience it, we can see it, but when we try and put a name to it, we really don't know. We can just call it what we think we call it, a giant metal bird or something.
Right, exactly.
Well, those are the main stories that you and I had talked about on our walk. Um, but you also alluded to the fact that you've had other experiences and just other things happening even up into your adult life, and you want to get into some of that and just tell us some of the stories and things.
Um, well, let's see. One of the most, well, a lot of the stuff it's weird and odd things that can't be explained. Like, example, over the summer, just this year, um, I was at a local bowling alley, and it was late. Everybody had left, and me and two other individuals were sitting waiting and talking, and the one ended up having to go to the bathroom. So we're sitting there waiting for this person to come back, and they never came back. So we were like, okay, well, let's go find her. And we walk through, and it's pretty much empty and closed, and everybody's kind of packing up, getting ready to leave. And I'm like, well, let me just check the women's bathroom quick. So I walked in, and as I'm walking in, the doors are all open because, of course, everybody's getting ready to leave. So they have the doors propped open. I walked in, and I kind of peeked around the corner, and I could hear what sounded, it was a very heavy sigh. And I could hear it sounded like it was coming right from the first stall in the bathroom. It was just a loud, ugh, like they were upset I walked in. And for a second, I thought I actually walked into the men's bathroom instead of the women's bathroom. And I'm kind of like, oh, oops. And I kind of backed out and looked at the door. No, that's the women's bathroom. And then I looked under the stall, and I didn't see any feet. And I'm going, okay, I need to clear this up. Is there somebody in there and they're trying to mess with me and they've got their feet up or something? So I went through and I opened the stalls, and there was absolutely nobody in there. And I'm like,
Oh wow.
I know what I heard. That was
Sure.
definitely a voice of a sigh, a human sigh. And I checked the faucets. I'm like, no, It's not like they're making noises or anything. Okay. Walked
Mm-hmm.
out, and the guy that was waiting for me, he's like, "Is she in there?" And I'm going, "She's not in there. I don't know what is though." Something in there, but it's not her. So I've always had just
Wow.
odd, strange things like that have happened to me pretty much my entire life.
Okay. Nothing that you can say, oh, this was this kind of an event, just a weird thing.
Yeah, a
And
lot of
I
strange.
think I really believe that most people can say that if they actually stop to think about it, because I'm one of those ones where I've had weird stuff happen, but I can't call it anything. Yeah, and like was it a Bigfoot? I don't know. Was it a ghost experience? I couldn't even say what happened was a ghost experience. I just know weird things happened. And I really believe most people, if they thought about it, has those kind of experiences. You,
Hmm.
you know, or just like when you walk into a building and all of a sudden you just feel really uneasy and something there's bad juju, right? You just get what they call it, a bad vibe. You got a bad vibe about this place, or I've been in the woods and I've heard people talking and there's nobody there. Just small little incidences that don't really register for most people. They're just like, oh, that's kind of odd, but whatever. I
Hmm.
really think most people experience those if they ever stopped and considered it. I really do, even non-believers.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you
Yep.
brush it off and try and be rational about it, you can rationalize almost anything that happens to you throughout life.
Oh yeah,
And but if you try and actually think about it, is it something that you should rationalize and just blow off and let it go, or think about it, and maybe it would open people's minds a little bit more to what the possibilities are out there.
sure, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and like I've heard voices on private land 5 acres back, and there's nobody out there,
Hmm.
but you can hear a conversation, and I'm not talking like we're talking Bigfoot samurai chatter. I'm talking an actual, some you hearing words. You know what I mean? Like I've experienced that before.
Yeah.
Um, I remember being way up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I could hear a cow mooing off in the woods. And we knew all the people within our general vicinity, and nobody had cows. Nobody. Like we knew the people. We were in the middle of 120 acres private land. We had 80 acres of it, and we were completely surrounded by hunting camps. This is not pasture land. This is all timbered land where they did the logging for paper mills and stuff, and it was just one cow, and you could just hear it mooing way off in the distance, kind of a thing. And every time I was out in the woods by myself in this certain area, I could hear it every single time, and it was consistent. It wasn't random. It was like every 4 or 5 minutes you would hear a moo. It was the strangest thing, and I could never track it down.
Hmm.
Never could track it down. But
And
I mean, go ahead.
you actually went like in to go find it and search for it?
Well, so up there is kind of like, I mean, Upper Peninsula, Michigan, you're not just going to walk on people's lands, but we knew the area. We were off an old logging road and we've driven down the entire logging road. And we knew the people on the other side of the river. And my dad held churches up there. So he knew the locals, and nobody had cows. It was just one of those things. And the only thing it could be is one random cow in just the right area that we could hear, and I was the only one that ever heard it. My dad said he never heard it,
Huh.
but it was just me. And again, I mean, logic is going to say some random person out there had a random cow that was very vocal and liked to moo a lot. That's the easy explanation,
Right.
right? But again, we knew these people. We built a summer camp right there for the kids in the area, so they'd all come. We knew most of the locals, and they're like, no, we don't have any cows up here. It's just not what we have in this area, you know? And it was just very strange, very strange.
See, and I've heard accounts where groups of people will be out in the middle of the woods or out somewhere, and one person might hear something and the other people in the group don't hear it at all.
Hmm.
Um, So that's interesting.
Yeah, but again, it just goes to show, like, something that as mundane as hearing a cow mooing out of place. People have crazy experiences all the time, and most of the time we just chalk it up to, oh, I mistook what I heard, or it must have been a bird, or oh man, I lost my keys again, even though I know I put them right there on the middle of the kitchen table, right? Or I walked into that bathroom and I heard a sigh, but it was probably the air conditioning kicking on. It really wasn't. You hear that kind of stuff all the time, and it's just, I don't believe it's that mundane. I believe that's part of our interactions with whatever else is going on out there. I really do.
Well,
I really do.
And thinking about it, there was incidents with the apartment that we lived in temporarily after my daughter was born. I know that was haunted with several different things, but pretty much, yeah, stayed away from me because I had the dog. But the apartment that we lived in, I had a blue heeler who
Mm-hmm.
was technically not allowed on the furniture, not allowed on the bed, but when my daughter's father was away at work, he would snuggle up on the bed next to me. But there would be times where the back door I could actually hear open, which was locked. Like, you'd have to lock that door.
Mm-hmm.
But the door would actually open. I wouldn't hear the keys jingling or anything. Door would close, and I would hear like heavy boots actually walking across the floor. And my dog would actually like crawl to the end of the bed, and you could see his hackles kind of going up and him growling. And he would just stare from the bed into the doorway. And then you would hear the like heavy footsteps and the door open
Mm-hmm.
and close again. That would happen probably at least once a week. I would hear something like that happening in the house or in the apartment. I also heard there was one time, most definitely, that I heard the voice. I was waiting for her father to come home one night, and I heard two distinct voices in my left ear, actually. And one said, "He's unfaithful." Yes, unfaithful. And I went, "Who?" And they said his name. Yes, unfaithful. And it was just very like, he is unfaithful. Yes, unfaithful. And I even didn't even say it out loud. It was kind of like in my head, like, who? And then his name, and yes, unfaithful. And the first voice was male and the second voice was a female. And I kind of, it stuck with me. Well, it wasn't until about a month later that I had those voices confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
When I ended up driving up to the restaurant to go look for him, and at like 2:00 in the morning, thinking that he was still cleaning up very late. And lo and behold, the closing manager was like, "No, he left at like 4:00 with the hostess to go to a party." All right.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, that was a weird thing that had happened in that apartment. That apartment building always did kind of give me creeps too, but it was more, I don't know, I didn't feel so scared. Maybe it was because of the dog. He always kind of gave me a clue, and I would just go,
Sure.
"Okay, go away." I would go away.
That's one of the reasons I don't like apartments. I've lived in them over the years, and I have a hard time getting used to the sounds of other people around me that aren't in my vicinity. You can hear them, next floor up, and you hear the running around or all this, or the TV down the hall, or, and I'm not saying that's what it was with you. I'm saying for me personally, I don't like hearing the sounds of other people, because then I can't hear what's going on around me. I'm very much that kind of a person where if there's a sound, I want to know exactly what it is and what's going on. And I don't want to be distracted by all these other background sounds from other people.
Yeah.
That's just me. I'm weird that way. That's why I don't like apartment buildings. But Grizz, you got any questions? Audience members, anybody in the chat room, any other questions for Jessica before we let her go?
I'm not going to her house.
I don't live in that house anymore.
Speaking of, I have to ask this because I'm on my phone. I got this little phone here and I'm looking at you. Is that a green screen background or is that like really just an excellent library behind you?
I wish that would be my dream library. No,
Okay.
This is actually window curtain, and this is actually one of those drop.
Gotcha. I had to ask because I'm looking at it and I'm going, man, I can't tell because that would be an epic library. You are absolutely right. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I'm glad we could make it work. I know you had your vacation in Florida. That's where I'm headed here. I'll be there by the time Thanksgiving rolls around. So yeah, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Grizz, you want to take us out?
Yeah, from coast to coast, ladies and gentlemen, around the world. We'll call it a wrap. Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Good night, guys. Y'all have a fantastic week.
It's a grizzly.
Should we get out of here?
No, we're gonna watch and listen.
Action.
It's a grizzly.
Oh, shit, should we run?
No.
Action.
It's a grizzly.
Oh, shit, should we run?
Okay. It's a grizzly.
Are you sure it's not a chipmunk? Action. No, get out of here. Action.
It's a grizzly.
I'm out of here.
Huh. Maybe it is a chipmunk. It's a grizzly.
Are we gonna die?
I don't know. We're just gonna sit here and listen and watch.
Let's get out of here, maybe.
Fall!